My high school wasn't just big on the arts, it was practically built around them. If you were in the jazz band, show choir, or theater, you weren't just some kid with an extracurricular, you were practically royalty. The whole school knew who you were. Assemblies featured your performances. Teachers gave you a little more leniency if you were traveling for competitions. And we didn't do anything small. Our competitions weren't the kind you could drive to after school and be home for dinner. We're talking national events, real stages, fancy auditoriums, judges with clipboards and accents, trips that lasted days, hotels, matching t-shirts, bus rides at ungodly hours of the night. I'd been part of it all for years. The music, the rehearsals, the adrenaline. But nothing prepared me for the trip that would become one of my most memorable and most ridiculous high school experiences. This particular year, our show choir had been selected to compete in Washington, D.C. For a bunch of 16 and 17-year-olds from a small town, it might as well have been another planet. We spent weeks preparing, late nights at school, endless run-throughs of choreography, more vocal warm-ups than my throat could handle. The morning we left, the bus was alive with energy. Everyone had pillows, snacks, and headphones. Teachers double-checked attendance lists. Chaperones, mostly parents, were doing that awkward mix of I'm responsible for you and I'm also trying to enjoy myself. And then there was me, sitting next to my boyfriend. We'd been dating for a few months, the kind of high school romance where everything felt dramatic and permanent. He'd just turned 17 on the trip, and I'd made a whole thing of it. Balloons in the hotel room, a cupcake at the rest stop, even a little scrapbook of our photos. We were inseparable. Competition day itself was a blur of hairspray, last-minute rehearsals, and whispered pep talks backstage. The performance went off without a hitch, at least from where I was standing. Afterward, we did the obligatory sightseeing, our show choir shirts making us look like a pack of singing tourists. By the time we boarded the bus to go home, we were exhausted but buzzing. We'd done well, and the adrenaline was still coursing through us. Little did I know, the bus ride home would end up being the real story. The ride back to our hometown was about 9 hours. We left late in the evening. At first, everyone was chatty, swapping snacks, scrolling through photos from the trip, posting updates. Slowly, the noise faded. By midnight, most people were asleep. The hum of the bus engine mixed with the occasional snore from a chaperone up front. I was in the very back of the bus with my boyfriend. It felt like our own little world back there. The darkness, the soft vibration of the road, the occasional passing headlights, all of it gave the night a surreal, secretive feel. But while the bus felt like our private universe, it wasn't. My friend's parents were there. My teachers were there. Even my boyfriend's dad was chaperoning. If teenage me thought we were invisible, adult me knows every adult on that bus probably knew exactly who was sitting where. Here's the thing about being 17, you're convinced you can do anything on zero sleep. I'd had maybe 40 minutes of rest in the last 24 hours between the competition, sightseeing, and the general chaos of being a teenager on a trip. My boyfriend, meanwhile, had the uncanny ability to fall asleep anywhere. By 1 a.m., he was out cold, slumped against me like a sack of potatoes. For 4 straight hours, he slept on my left arm. At first, it was kind of cute. We were the picture of young love, cuddled in the back of a bus. By the second hour, my arm had gone completely numb. By the third, my neck was aching. By the fourth, my eye was twitching. Every time I started to drift off, he'd shift or sigh or jostle me awake. I was exhausted. I was irritable. And I was 17, which is basically a recipe for petty decisions. Finally, at around 3 a.m., I snapped. Not out loud, I wasn't going to start drama on a dark bus. But in my mind, I was plotting. He kept stirring, waking up just enough to reposition himself because he was uncomfortable, never mind that I'd been his human pillow for hours. So I did what any exhausted, mildly vindictive teenage girl might do. I fell asleep, dramatically. The next time he stirred and tried to wake me up to shift, I didn't budge. He whispered my name. Nothing. He nudged my shoulder. Nothing. He sighed and shifted uncomfortably, realizing he was on his own. Inside, I was laughing. It was my tiny act of rebellion after a long, chaotic trip. My secret victory. Now, years later, I look back on that night and laugh. Not because anything scandalous happened, it didn't, but because it's such a snapshot of who I was at 17, dramatic, exhausted, trying to be grown up, but still very much a kid. It's also a reminder of how wild those high school trips felt. The stakes were so high. The emotions were so big. You were away from home, surrounded by your friends, convinced you were living some kind of movie. The truth is, we probably all have bus ride stories. Moments of drama, exhaustion, or whispered secrets. Those trips were part of growing up, and even the ridiculous parts, maybe especially the ridiculous parts, are what stick with you. If there's a moral here, it's not some big life lesson. It's this. Never underestimate how uncomfortable a bus ride can be. Never volunteer your arm as a pillow. And never assume that adults don't know exactly what's going on at the back of the bus, because they probably do. But more than that, it's a reminder of how intense and hilarious teenage years can be. How even something as small as a sleepless bus ride can become a story you tell years later, shaking your head and laughing. That night on the bus didn't change my life. But it became one of those memories that sits in your brain like a Polaroid. A snapshot of who you were with, and how ridiculous life could be at 17. And honestly, those are the best memories of all.